Hello everyone, welcome to Tactica Imperialis and to today's video. Today is going to be another my thoughts on, excuse the slightly odd setup. I've moved out of my dig, so I'm kind of crashing somewhere for the weekend. But I wanted to get this video out, and this is going to be my thoughts on Warcry. I said I was going to do this last week. I wanted to do a video on Warcry because Warcry has been very, very hyped. It's been going for a long, long time, and we finally get to see how it's going to pan out. So, as you'll probably already know, Warcry is out on pre-order this week. It will be available, I think, coming out this weekend ahead, or no, I think it's a pre-order this weekend coming. And I can't even keep up with what's coming out when at this point. There's so much coming out, I can't even keep up. But Warcry is very, very soon going to be in our hands. And I want to talk about it because there's a lot of hype around it, and there's been a lot of mystery around it for a long time as well. So, what is Warcry? In case you've been either living under a rock or just missed the announcement, what is Warcry? Warcry is essentially Age of Sigmar's answer to Warhammer 40,000 Kill Team. It is a small-scale skirmish warband-based game where you have individual fighters that activate and fight each other. You have a very small board, you have a lot of terrain, and all of that sort of thing. You create your own missions through battle plan generators, same as you would in AOS Open War. So it will feel both familiar and different for AOS players because there are a lot of things in it that feel like they've come from Age of Sigmar, this drawing of battle plans, this reliance on individuals and terrain, all of that sort of thing. Whereas if you come from 40k, you'll also find some familiarity with it as well because they've implemented some mechanics that are brand new for Warcry and for Age of Sigmar as a game system. So I'm looking forward to see how that all sort of fits together. There has been a how to play video released that's on the Warcry website, I believe, and I've had a watch of that, and the gameplay itself seems to be another case of simple to learn but difficult to master, which is a really, really good thing. So GW's definitely got right with things like Apocalypse seems to have gone over and been quite simple to pick up and play. AOS itself is very easy to pick up and play. 40k slightly less so, but a lot of the game systems now are easy to pick up, but have a very high skill ceiling. So a lot of people can play it, but not everybody's going to be very good at it, or is not going to become a top level player just because they can. So what they've done is they've implemented a new initiative system, a strength and toughness system, an alternating activation system, and a few other little mechanics here and there. The first main change is to initiative, because in 40k, there's no such thing as an initiative system. You just go. One player goes, the other player goes. Apocalypse, you have a little bit more complexity because you have got initiative and activations. AOS, you have a straight, simple roll-off, and that means that whoever wins that roll-off or drew the roll-off and won last turn goes and gets priority or choice of priority in the upcoming battle round. That's not the case here. In the case of Warcry, both players or each player will roll 6 dice, and that is their initiative roll. And for every dice they get that is a single, i.e. it is the only one of its 6 to land on that number, that counts as 1 toward their initiative roll. Every double, so if you roll 2 3s, for example, that's a double, doesn't count. Every triple, every quadruple does not count towards the initiative roll. So as an example, if I roll my 6 dice, I get a 6, a 5, 2 3s, and 2 1s. I have 2 doubles and 2 singles. That means that my initiative roll, in effect, is 2, and that means that unless someone else gets 2 or more on their initiative roll, I will get the priority going forward. However, if you have the initiative going forward, it is very likely that you will have less doubles and less triples and certainly less quadruples than your opponents will. And those dice are not just ditched, they're kept back and used during the turn to activate abilities. All the fighters themselves have got very basic stats. They have move stats, wound stat, weapon stats, toughness stat, which is a brand new thing for Sigmar, and I think they have a morale bravery stat. I can't remember what the fourth stat is right now. They have a secondary set of abilities, which might be like Fly or Berserker or whatever else. It's all explained in these rune marks, and then they have the stats for their weapons, which include a strength value, an attacks value, a range value, and a damage value, including critical hits, which we'll get to. So they have those, and that's one side of their card. On the flip side of their war scroll is their ability. Some of these are faction specific, some of these are probably card specific, but they're all activated by you spending your doubles, triples, and quadruples to activate them. So the more dice you have that are doubles and triples, the more abilities you're going to be able to activate in the upcoming round. And obviously, if you've got quadruples and triples, they're going to be more powerful abilities than the doubles cards because they're just harder to get, so they're going to be harder to activate. You can't store these dice between turns, so you have to spend them that turn in order to get anything out of those dice. So you're encouraged to spend them doing something. Every warband has their own unique abilities, and I think that some fighters have their own unique stuff as well. So there's going to be a real complex metagame when it comes to building the right composition of warband that can both stand on its own and also reliably get off the abilities it needs in order to maximize its damage and win the game. So it might be you build a warband of lots of fighters who are good on their own but don't have particularly crazy abilities. So you're going to say, right, I don't need my abilities to win this game. I'm going to win this game with my fighters alone, and if I get the abilities to help me, great. Or you might take a warband of slightly weaker fighters and say, right, my entire gimmick is activating abilities to do some crazy combos, but if I don't get those dice, I might just lose. So you can definitely play it in very different ways, depending on what your army is and how they play and how you like to play as a general. So I really approve of that. In terms of weapons, as I said, strength and toughness is now a thing. This is the same system I believe as 40k has, which is if your strength beats the toughness, you need 3s. If your strength is less than toughness, you need 5s. If the strength and toughness are equal, you need 4s. And there's no armor saves. No such thing as rend or AP or save. You just have strength versus toughness. You beat that roll, you score so many wounds. A lot of fighters have got a lot of wounds, so we're talking probably 10 or more wounds in a lot of cases. Some people have got 15 wounds even, but a lot of weapons have got high damage, which can also be improved by critical hits. If you roll a 6 to wound, your weapon does extra damage based on its second damage marker. So on the damage tab, you'll see, for example, 1/3. It's a 1 on a standard wound, but it's 3 on a critical hit. So you'll do a lot more damage if you can land a 6 to wound. I don't know if you can modify dice. We haven't seen that particularly. So there's going to be a lot going on, and I look forward to seeing exactly what the metagame shakes out and what is the right combination of things. There's more to it than that. So, for example, you can also move around and jump across terrain without restrictions. So there's no point going down and up again. You could just jump across, and that's completely allowed. So terrain is going to factor heavily into how this game plays. And I don't know if I like that. Well, I do, but I don't. It's kind of a mixed bag. Obviously, terrain-heavy games are very, very fun, and being able to exploit the battlefield to your advantage is something that is very, very fun to do. I've talked about that in a previous video. I talked about battlefield management in an old My Thoughts On, and I stand by that. Terrain management and using the battlefield to your advantage is absolutely a very valid way to win games. However, games like Warcry seem to have built themselves on the assumption that you have a lot of terrain. Now that's fine, because, for example, the starter box comes with a lot of terrain for free inside the starter box, and they're selling special terrain packs, the Ruined City, a Mausoleum, which is the Garden of War reboxed for the bazillionth time, and they're also going to be selling a Storm Vault terrain box, which they've revealed at the AOS Open Day. We'll get to that in another video. So there's going to be a lot of terrain kits available, but the game is relying on you having a lot of terrain to play the game, which means if you're trying to introduce or play test Warcry with the possible idea of buying in later, you don't have to just buy the core book and your fighter cards. If you're not playing a Chaos faction, you can buy fighter cards for your own faction. We'll get to that. You also have to buy enough terrain for your board to work, as opposed to just being a wide open, just fighting on the plains. You can do it, but the game sort of is built around you having these multi-tiered, densely packed terrain sets. And whilst I like that, I also understand that that's a bit of a financial limiter for some people who don't want to get into too much too fast and have to buy terrain and all that stuff on top of getting into the game. Because you've got to get a unique board or find a smaller board to play on. Then you need to put your terrain out. Then you need your cards. Then you need your rules. Then you need your miniatures. It's a lot to invest just to get into a game of Warcry. And I don't know if that's the ideal thing if people haven't got terrain already. I know you can play on sparse boards, but the game works better when it's dense, I suspect. In terms of those factions, we are getting 6 Chaos Warbands out the gate with the promise of 2 more to follow. So we're going to get 8 in total. We've seen the Iron Golems and the Untamed Beasts. They're going to be in the starter box. The Cypher Lords from the Realm of Light, they're going to be out immediately. So the Metal, Beast and Light are straight up. We've seen the Unmade from the Realm of Death, who look creepy as heck but very, very interesting. The Splintered Fang from the Realm of Life with the snakes. I talked about those in a previous video. The Corvus Cabal, we've seen those as well. The ones from the Realm of Shadow, they look awesome. And we're also getting a Spire one and a Realm of Fire one. So I'm thinking this will be the natives of the Varanspire, and these guys will be just an Axian group. So we're going to get all 7 realms plus the Varanspire itself for our Warcry Warbands for Chaos. That's great, but what if you don't want to play Chaos? Good, you've got options. So for Order, you can bring in warbands of Stormcast Eternals, Vanguard Chamber, so you get Vanguard, Hunters, Gryph-hounds, and Aetherwings. You can bring in Daughters of Cain, basically the entire not hero roster of Daughters of Cain, both Kidderai, both Melisai, and both types of Witch Elf. It's pretty nuts. And Idoneth Deepkin, where you get both sets of Namati and both sets of Eels. And that's really scary, because Eel Cav is very, very crunchy and very, very fast. So it'll be interesting to see how their meta shakes out. I'd have liked to see Caradron here, or Sylvaneth here, or something that wasn't Stormcast and Double Elves. Because Stormcast and Double Elves is a little bit biased, and I think even as someone who plays all 3 of those factions and is happy to see them all in the game, I'd have rather seen something like Caradron or Fire Slayers released immediately, because it just gives more diversity to the Order faction. If you play Death, you can bring in Legions of Nagash, which is basically just a Necromancer, some Skeletons, and some Graveguard. You can bring in Nighthaunt, where you've got a few different options, so Chain Rasps, Glaive Wraith Stalkers, Grimghast Reapers, I think, and a couple of others. Or Flesh Eater Courts, where you get Crypt Ghouls, Crypt Flayers, and Crypt Horrors. You can also bring in the Courtiers, I think. Like the Crypt Infernal is definitely a thing, which I think is the unit champion of the Crypt Flayers, not the Courtier. So again, they've got plenty of powerful options too. If you're in Destruction, you can bring in Iron Jaws, Bone Splitters, or Gloomspite Gits. Iron Jaws have a bare bones roster because they always do. Bone Splitters have got like 2 options, and Gloomspite have got the basic Gobbos and Squigs, and the Squig Hoppers and the Boingrot Bounders as their options as well. So a very diverse and broad set of factions available immediately. You can buy little fighter packs for these non-Chaos factions, or if you're buying the Chaos factions, well, you'll get their rules in their box when you buy those miniatures. So overall, a really good diverse metagame, and I'm really interested to see how it shakes out. Hopefully they balanced it relatively well, and if they haven't, well, we'll find out pretty quickly, and hopefully they'll fix it post-haste. So in summary, I think Warcry is a really good starting point for Age of Sigmar. It's obviously been designed as a spin-off from the main game, but you can also treat it a little bit like Kill Team as a gateway into the base game of Age of Sigmar. Because Kill Team for 40k has done a fantastic job of very subtly and cleverly making you build a small 40k army. So you buy a squad to play the basic Kill Team, then you buy an elite squad, then you buy a commander, then perhaps you buy something else because you've got 2 team options available to you, and before you know it, you've built a 750 40k list. Before you know it, you've just done that already, done, there's an army, and you can start playing the base game at 40k with the collection that you've amassed. And I wonder what they'll do with Warcry to try and encourage something similar. Will you be able to, later on in expansions, add in, say, Chaos Spawn? Will demons make more of an appearance? Because you also have the Furies and the little buzzard things whose name has gone out of my head as chaotic beasts that can be roaming the battlefield. And you can also bring in the Prowler for the Untamed Beast. Will they add in more expansion units to have more natural hazards, which can allow you to build small demon forces as allies? Will they bring the warbands into the game as part of, say, a Dark Oath faction? So you have Mortals of Chaos, which is like Marauders, the Dark Oath miniatures we've seen up to now, and then a special unit, kind of like the Shadespire warbands, you can bring in the Warcry groups as a special unique unit that you can then play as inside your Dark Oath army. I'd love that as an idea, and I hope they do something like that to give the Warcry players a reason to use their armies more by getting them into the base game of AOS, and people who collect lots of different ones can then bring them together and they'll fight under the banner of their chosen Dark Oath Chieftain or War Queen or whatever. I hope that they are able to do that and use Warcry as a means of getting into the base game. Same as Underworlds. You get enough Underworld stuff, you might say, okay, I've got all 3 of the Underworlds groups for Stormcast. Can I do anything else with them? Oh, you can. You can put them into the base game of the Stormcast Eternals Battletome if you just buy a few more models. Sure, great. And the same thing coming from Warcry. You have a small squad of Vanguard now. You've got the Fast Striders from Shadespire. You just buy a Lord of Kilo, you bring them together, bang, you're off and running. You've got yourself your army. I hope they're able to do that, and maybe there'll be expansions that scale up the game the same way as Kill Team has to allow that to happen. But I'm definitely going to play Warcry. I'm thinking I might even get myself my own board just so that I can play Warcry. Because I'm planning to do a Realm of Battle board one day. Whether it's this upcoming academic year or not, I don't know. I hope to, but I might not. Though I have got extra incentive thanks to the AOS Open Day. We'll get to that in another video. But I might get a second smaller board of about 30 by 20, about 3x2. It's also slightly smaller than 3x2. So that I can have my own Warcry board. That I can build up and just have on my coffee table and wherever I'm going to be living going forward. So I can just have games in my own flat, which would be a nice change of pace. So that's everything that I wanted to say, I think, about Warcry. We've seen the warbands, the miniatures look amazing. The rules look very interesting. They're very unique and new, whilst also having a little bit of that Sigmar flavour mixed in as well. So I think there'll be something for veterans and something for new players. And I hope that people run with Warcry the same way that they ran with Kill Team, and we'll see more from it in the future. But that's just my opinion. I've rambled on for nearly 20 minutes. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Are you excited for Warcry? Are you going to play it? As a Sigmar player, are you going to work your way down? As a new player who's never played Sigmar, are you going to use this as your way to get into the universe and then work your way up to the game? Has this got you interested in Sigmar for the first time? Always interested to see what you have to say. And I hope that whatever happens with Warcry, the community supports it and runs with it because it has some real potential, I think. Anyway, that's all for today. Next week, I think I'll be talking about the Age of Sigmar Open Day if I don't do it before next week because I might have time, I might not. Either way, we'll be talking about that very, very soon because it's only 11 o'clock in the morning and there's been some tasty stuff already. So, thank you very much for watching. This has been Tactica Imperialis and this has been my thoughts on Warcry. See you all again. Bye for now.